Welcome aboard the Power Up with Manal podcast, your go-to source for inspiring entrepreneurship, leadership, and mental fitness development. Get ready to push your limits mentally and come away feeling like a turbocharged version of yourself. Let's power up our lives. Are you ready to power up? We are going to introduce you to the amazing Drew Dillon. As a product strategist, consultant, and entrepreneur, Drew has valuable insights on product development and commercialization, as well as expert tips on scaling and growing your business. He's a champion of tackling challenges head-on and with a perfect balance of technical know-hows and emotional intelligence. Drew will help inspire and motivate you to push forward and adopt forward-thinking strategies that will keep your company ahead of the curve. Join us for this incredible session and let's power up together. Drew, welcome to the Power Up with Manal podcast. I am so excited to have you here. We've done so many episodes on Mondays with Manal around interoperability and product and the evolution of what's going on in today's world, but not just that, also how to keep a strong mindset, really driving forward, understanding change, understanding evolution, and it all starts here. And I couldn't think of anyone that fit that mold better than you. You've always impressed me. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here. You've always been super impressionable with, the strategies that you bring forward, but not just the strategies, also, your very even keel personality, the way you think through, turmoil and chaos, and you've been in big corporate, you've started corporations, you help companies expand and have a strategic output. There are many layers to you and many facets. If you can take a moment to introduce yourself, what you do, and the journey that you have been on.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice to meet you. Thanks everybody for listening. Drew Dillon, longtime product leader. I think, when I first started out, there's no school of product management or there's no degree in product management that you can get. But what I found throughout the course of my career is I've just always been interested in a lot of different things. So at first I was a graphic designer, then I was an engineer, then I was in sales. When you start to basically average all those things out, people told me that's product. You're doing product. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. Somebody named that. Most notably, I was with a company called Yammer, which was sort of like one of these early pre-Slack called Facebook for the enterprise sort of apps that got bought by Microsoft, for $1 billion way back, before that was a common occurrence in startup land. And then since then, product leadership roles, and then leading up to kind of my two most recent things, which are what I call fractional product leadership, as well as founded a company called Burb, which unfortunately in the process of shutting down, but back to fractional product leadership, which is helping sort of early stage startups scale and build their product strategy from 0 to 1 and beyond.
Yeah, I love that. So while in this product strategy role, especially in the startup world, and, we are sort of in this like the 2000s, like on steroids, right? We're in a new sort of era of technology and AI, and most of it, I don't understand. I'll just be real, but I know I need it and I study it. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing out there today, and how do you help founders and companies, think through some of this evolution and how to set themselves up for constant change, really?
The craziest thing for me always with new technology is just like figuring out where it fits. With AI right now, you've got this crazy spectrum between AI is going to take over the world and we're all doomed and humanity is going to go extinct. And like, this is a stupid toy that nobody cares about. And whenever you see polar ends like that, like the answer is always in the middle. It's always going to be somewhere in the middle of like, okay, what is this thing? How can I use it? What will it impact? That kind of stuff. And I think we're still in the early stages of somewhat of a growth curve, of a sort of an exponential curve of what this thing will become. But at the same time, I think we can look back to our own foundations, and the foundation of product development over the past 10 years. I've always asked people these like complicated interview questions. And my goal in actually asking complicated interview questions is to see if they're just going to throw in some random magical piece of technology into the answer, because it's almost never the answer. Magic technology is like a tool that you can rely on in certain scenarios, but the correct scenario and product is almost always understand your user better and what they need better, and then layer in the magical thing on top of it, and then it becomes something interesting and valuable to the end user. So yeah, I'm working with a client right now in legal tech, and they don't need AI. Why? Because it was founded by a guy who's been working as a lawyer for 25 plus years. He has a deep domain expertise. When we do finally add AI into the mix, it's going to be unique and valuable, but he gets the user, and that's why the thing's successful. So at a macro level, just take a step back from the tool and the outcomes of the tool to figure out what's unique and valuable, and then figure out how to use the new thing.
Yeah, no, I love that. Can you expand a little bit on really understanding the user? Because I think that's where most the challenges come. Like that's a big miss. I know I've missed that too. Like I'm not perfect. And and I've had to reverse back and be like, well, but from a user experience, this isn't working, and our and there's another challenge. So I kind of want to throw in another question with that. We are in a very multi-generational user, I would say, climate, right? Certain industries are ranging from their clientele being, baby boomers to millennials. You have a big transfer of wealth happening. So things like law and financial services, financial planning, insurance are having to deal with like a vast range of generational clients. How do you tackle that? And what does that mean to be user focused?
Yeah, I think you have to, first start with a concept of who you're serving. Like that's always the case in any business. You can't serve everybody because everybody wants to serve everybody, and you just get drowned out in the noise. So you first have to start out with, a user persona, and then go after that user persona. Now, this is where technology can get tricky because you're now forming an opinion about who should be using the thing. And I don't believe that technology is like politically neutral. By making that choice, you're intentionally excluding other people. So you have to be, careful about the ways you design these things and by the way you think of these things. But if you can define the characteristic of your user base in such a way, that you can go find those people, sit down and have a conversation with them. I always believe in kind of the empty notebook sort of approach of like, what's going on with you? What are your challenges? What do you like? If you can start all the way back there, get into their headspace, talk about what their day looks like, even outside beyond the beautiful hypothesis of the product that they have in their mind, you can get some really interesting context about who this person is, and they will, if you ask the right questions, they will tell you their problems. And if you go then talk to 5 more of those people and they keep hearing the same thing, if you start hearing the same words repeated over and over again, that's a product, and you can kind of like continue to build off of that. Now, then you come back to things like email, web browsers, kind of foundational now, which are almost like utilities of the technology space. They have gotten to such a scale of breadth that they have those multi-generational problems. They have the multi-user problems. And so they now have to become a lot more broad and a lot less focused. Email is not about, getting a sales deal done. It's about sending pictures of your grandkids. It's about, getting notifications from your bank. You'll notice that those sorts of like large utilities end up growing a lot more slowly and changing a lot more slowly because they're accounting for all these different parameters, of who's coming in. I always used to think my grandmother, when she was like 91, joined Facebook, and she would reply on my photos like she was writing a letter, like "Dear Drew,
Oh, that
love,
is so cute.
love Grammy." And it very rarely had anything to do with the picture. I was just like, I would love to understand her mindset. I never got a chance to do like the user research of like, how do you perceive this thing? What is this, to somebody who was born, in the 18 or in the, before the 20s.
Oh, that's so cute. Drew, you are so knowledgeable on so many aspects. And I do feel that, being in different fields, and I've sort of taught this to a lot of my students, that the power of lateral moves and learning businesses from different perspectives. And that sort of created this great diversity in your mindset. How do you keep that going? Like, how do you, as an individual, keep an open mind and, listen to different perspectives, understand different, strategies, implementations, change management, whatever it may be. And sometimes it's personal, right? Like, how do you keep that going in because you're busy. I mean, you have family, you started a business, you are also, product strategy. Like, there's a lot happening in your life. How do you sort of keep that going?
I've always had a fascination with random bits of information. Like, we were like the family that watched Jeopardy like during dinner. My parents would actually tell me to like stop telling them about my day so they could listen to Jeopardy. So like random pieces of information have always seemed really, really fascinating to me. And because of that, I would pull together these different things and I would draw threads between two very different, like disparate concepts somewhat easily. I would kind of understand, I would look for familiar things. So a concrete example of that, I got my computer science degree. Computer science, they taught me C, which is like not a worthwhile language for most of modern technology. It's very, very like pointer management, all that kind of stuff. Like no modern web stack, with the exception of Facebook, which isn't even all that modern, really runs on C. But what I learned really by going super, super deeply into C, which is a pretty foundational kind of early object-oriented language, is like, where are the tools? What are the things that I need? What does a loop look like? What does a if statement look like? How do I branch code? All that kind of stuff. Such that when I went to learn other languages, I was like, okay, where are my pieces? Where are the frameworks that I know from the previous one that I can now apply to this? And so because of that, I always kind of like am thinking about the meta levels of like, okay, what's behind this thing? What's repeatable? What is the framework? And related to that, I found that I don't think of it as tech as an industry, which I know that especially economists love to say, well, the tech industry is down, but like, what does Uber have to do with Microsoft? Like, those are two exceptionally different companies. One of them is literally a giant cab company, and the other one is making software for businesses. And just like, how would you evaluate those two things in the same way? So to me, tech is an approach. And by thinking of tech as an approach to problem solving, to fixing solutions, it's meant that I've been able to go between companies like, one that built enterprise software, one that did dental billing, the current one I'm working with right now, which is legal technology. It's all at the end of the day, it's about, okay, who are the users? What do they need? What is our approach? How do we execute on the development and delivery of technology that serves them? And then how do we continue to operate and iterate in a way that like keeps growing the company and building the business?
Yeah, I love that. I also love when you talked about these sort of micro pieces of information that you retain or creating micro habits. I think it's so important because when we think about like, tackling something new or learning something new, usually we go all in, it's overwhelming, there's a lot of material, instead of taking things in micro doses. And then eventually all those micro doses sort of end up merging together, and you've created more knowledge in your headspace than you would have studying one piece of information in exhaustion. And I love that you said that. I kind of do the same thing. I have these power hours where I study things I don't know about, like generally, like I till this day I'm still trying to figure out what the heck Web3 is. But like, if you
It's
got
already
me in a
over.
bar,
We're already on Web
yeah,
five.
but if
Yeah.
you got me in a bar with a drink, then all of a sudden I'm spewing all this information that I've taken in micro doses, and I'm like, wow, I guess I know a lot more about this than I thought I did.
That's the other, relating to that at Web3 and things that you end up like just churning your brain on. I've found if something is actually genuinely difficult and the experts telling you about it make it sound actually genuinely difficult, it's actually not worth
Right.
knowing about. People are trying to trick you with something. So like if the thing is not accessible, like the definition of expertise is somebody of an expert is somebody who can actually put it in terms that a 3-year-old can understand. And if
Right.
they can't do that, it's BS. They're not actually telling you anything. They're just giving you random words.
Hey, good advice. Good advice right there. Good advice. One thing that I've noticed every time we talk to each other, even if there's chaos happening around us, you have a very strong sort of um, way of approaching chaos and high stress and lots going on at one time. From a mindset perspective, how does that help you? And how do you stay so calm in so much chaos? Because we all say we do, but when things happen, then we use the excuse, well, but I'm human. I kind of fell apart, and we do. How do you do it? Like, share with us, your sort of your calm demeanor. Like, I love it. I love how you sort of, calmly walk through chaos, if that's the right way to say it.
Yeah, I figured out a long time ago. I've worked with a lot of folks who have suffered burnout and things like that. And what I realized early on, so I joined Yammer as employee number 60 from like a larger company, and I was one of the few people there who had a kid. We had a 10-month-old. And life was, just utter chaos. I tell people the story of building a company to $1 billion in 3 years is you felt like you're keeping the wheels on the car as you're like trying to drive the thing. What I found was I was never, and then I moved actually from sales into product, where I was actually doing two jobs at one point while raising, at that point, a 1-year-old. And what I discovered about myself is I don't burn out from overwork. Like, I can work pretty much infinitely as long as it doesn't affect other aspects of my life. That doesn't really bother me. What I found burns me out 100% is if I can't move the ball forward, if I can't make progress. And that just kind of, when I figured that out about myself, I realized that it was kind of all about taking the next step for me. Whether it's, and that I have a somewhat of a high tolerance for risk, if, I can at least foresee what that thing is going to turn into. And so just putting one foot in front of the other, taking the next step, even if that one foot goes off a cliff and you don't know where you're going to land, that's always okay for me. As long as I don't feel just like stuck. If I feel like I'm stuck and I don't have agency to make my own changes, then I really do start to burn out, and that starts to affect me pretty badly.
And how do you handle burnout? What's your approach?
Yeah, usually it involves some kind of change, just radical change. If how do I get out of this situation? How do I just exit the scenario? So in work, I am a bit of a job hopper for that reason, just because if I feel like I can't move the company forward, then okay, then I need to step out because I can't make progress here.
Yeah, but I love that because so many of us stay in the cycle. It's like almost like we're on this hamster wheel, and we know we're like hit sort of a dead end, right? We know we're feeling burnout, but avoidance usually is a very strong human behavior when things aren't going right, right? Nobody wants to tell themselves, and then you're in this wheel, and it's hard to sort of shift. So I like that advice, take action because life is short. And is it worth staying on that hamster wheel? That's a big question.
So much. I mean, yeah, you just have to think about the percentage of your life you spend doing work. It is massive. It is it's the largest time commitment you'll do towards anything. And if you're going to be miserable there, yeah, you meet these people at big companies because they set up their equity grants in such a way that they get a grant every year. And so not only do they have like golden handcuffs, the handcuffs get bigger and stronger and more powerful the longer that they stay there. They're like, well, if I miss out on next year's bonus, that's, $100,000, $200,000 down the drain. You're just like, that I feel for you. I fundamentally don't have that in my DNA to put up with that because I just realize that so much of your life is impacted by that.
With everything that you do and having family, and it's interesting because I find that a lot of people ask this question to mothers and women, but fathers feel just as a parent, it's a parent. I kind of don't deviate from the two. Do you ever feel parent guilt? And if you do, how do you deal with it? Because I have now talked to many people, and those are like the first words that come out of their mouth. And this is men, women, just generally when you're, on a path and you have a lot on your plate, it's somewhat of a natural behavior. how do you deal with it? And do you feel it, or is there a mindset approach that you take that helps you, see beyond it?
I definitely have in the past. Thankfully, these days, as a consultant, I've got a lot of flexibility. So, I think my current schedule right now is handful of hours and then 2 days on. And so I've got a lot of time to put into, spending time with the kids, which is just great, which is one of the reasons I do consult. In the past, I traveled. I had a job that had me flying to Australia every couple of months for like 2 weeks at a time. And so, particularly, our older daughter is kind of the daddy's girl. Her attitude and behavior would just degrade the entire time that I was gone, and it was pretty clear that that's why. And then she would, start, causing trouble around the house and that kind of stuff. So I think, yeah, I don't have there's no magic bullet. I think I managed to find one for myself. But I don't think there's any advice I can provide except to just understand your boundaries and find a place that respects them.
Yeah, that's a good point because and I'm probably, this is repetitive from, my past shows, but we grow up with the societal expectation that there's work and there's life, and you go about trying to balance both. If we are taught that it is one ecosystem, like you said, the most hours that you put spending doing anything in life is work. And if we learn at an earlier, I would say, age, the mindset shift that it is a part of your ecosystem, and how do you manage all the pieces together, just like you would. I mean, it's amazing how we're so great at putting together, product roadmap, the customer journey life cycle, and putting all these process flows together, but we don't actually take that and apply it to our lives. And if you think about it, it's almost like we have this process flow of life, and work is a part of it. Family is a part of it, friends, dependents, whatever it may be, passions, hobbies, right? And I that's a great approach. And I try to do that too. And I've been there, and I've had, there are these things that you get as you grow, as you age, which children, that's the beauty about them. They don't have these inhibitions of like, judgment and fears, of, what people will say, which is what we're so geared to think about. I've also learned to, deviate from all that and really focus on what my ecosystem looks like. And that's changed the course of mindset. And that, to me, a small shifts in mindset create large leaps in life.
Yeah, work-life balance to me is one of the worst concepts we've
Worst.
come up with, because fundamentally there are things you want and things you have to do to get the things that you want. Like that's the transaction. And there are things that you want, on one side, and there are things that you have to do on this side that like have nothing to do with work to get the things that you want. I think we tend to think of like work as the stuff I don't want to do, but there's plenty of stuff I don't want to do. I don't want to mow the lawn, but I don't want my house to look like crap. Like there's things in both spheres that end up with the thing that you want. And so if your goal is, your kids going to a good school, that they have, the opportunity to have a happy, healthy family for themselves, there are aspects of both work and home that need to be there in order to provide for those things. For them to go to school, they need to go to a good school. They need to be able to afford it. For them to go to a good school, they need to have had extra help on their homework and stuff like that. So you need to be there at home. And yeah, the more we try to like atomize these two things and put work and life in conflict with each other, the less we understand like actually what we want out of our own lives in the long term.
Right, which creates a lot of anxiety and sometimes depression, maybe burnout, right? And these are great mindset shifts to help individuals who are in that to sort of get out of it. And I remember you told me one time, and I actually love this. And it's funny because my husband says the same thing to me all the time. But like, if I'm worked up about something, and you said this one time when we were on a call, and you're like, "Is it that big of a deal?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like, is it that big of a deal?" Like, we make such a big deal out of things, and in the grand scheme of things, when we look at it from like a macro lens, like it doesn't matter, and it's so much wasted headspace and energy that we're putting towards it.
Yeah, the meta analysis of how much energy and emotion we put into something is just fascinating. And it's, especially now I've got a daughter as a teenager. It's very hard to step out of the moment sometimes and think about, what your emotions are in that state. So you're like, why are you just doing the thing? But how much better does your relationship get if you can just step back and say, okay, why am I feeling this way? What is she actually communicating? Like, what are we, what's the outcome that we both want here?
How do you approach that when it's a client?
It's much easier when it's a client because I'm, although I pride myself on caring a lot, and I think that's what makes for a good consultancy is actually really, caring about the outcome of the thing. At the same time, it's their company. So as long as, I've had situations where I disagreed with the outcome, the decision of the company, and I was like, cool, I'm going to do what you need me to do, as long as it doesn't like impact my reputation or in some way like damage or go against my values. Like I had one client who just couldn't sit down and like commit to a plan over 3 to 6 months. And like you realize going back and forth on plans all the time causes, mental anguish for your employees. It's actually abusive. And he just couldn't like get there mentally of understanding why employees would feel, have mental issues relating to his inability to plan. I'm like, well, then I got to go. Like, I can't be part of that.
Right, right. So, with product and technology changes, right? It's very easy to implement. Hard, but easy because it's a machine, some sort of machine, right? A lot of times we miss the boat that the internal employees are going to have to deal with this change. And there's a human aspect of it. When you strategize with founders and CEOs and companies, do you sort of think about that and as far as a change management strategy? And how do you do that? What's the approach?
Yeah, I think so much of where we fall down in planning is communicating the pieces. You need to go do this, you need to go do that, you need to go do this. And then when things change, you're like, forget it, you need to go do this instead, and you need to go do that. Like, and people are like, what? Why? Like, I don't get what happened. And there's this whiplash. And I think that is just a fundamental failing of leadership in a lot of different scenarios, which is like not telling people where you're going or where you perceive where you're going. You just like communicate task, 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 task. And then, not by not communicating where you're going, if our perspective on how to get there changes, or even our understanding of where we're going changes, they just we leave them in the dust. They have, we were on this path, we didn't really understand where the path was going. Now we're on a new path, we don't understand why this new path came about. So it's just like over communicating, treating here's backing way up, treat people like grown-ups. Like they can understand what a corporate plan looks like, they can understand why you need to execute a corporate plan, they can understand all the different components of getting there. So trusting people with more information about the what's and whys and how, and then communicating the deviations and where those deviations came from. If you're upfront with all this information, and being upfront with it in a corporate environment often means repeating it 7 different times in a bunch of different forums and formats, then people will feel bought into the change. Okay, I understand why we did this. It sucks that I have to change, and that now the work that I did is getting thrown away. But at the same time, like if that's what it takes, because I believe in you, the leadership, because I believed in the plan in the first place, I'm going to trust you in going in that new direction.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's wonderful. I mean, you're right. One thing we miss is that human aspect, and communication is, and a lot of communication and telling the why behind, like communication is good to say out there, but the way you communicate matters too, and how you communicate, right? And the why behind changes matter. The understanding the overall North Star matters. Addressing fears matters. Like a lot of times we don't address fears because we're like, well, it's silly for them to think that. Well, okay, but they're thinking it. And then one thing I've learned in many aspects of life, whether it be professional or personal, when you don't say anything, it leaves a lot of room for the mind to wander.
Yeah.
And this is not only business advice, it is relationship advice.
Yeah, and in
Like the
any group you're going to find, there's a certain set of people that just aren't going to be on board with the decision, and that's always, once you get up to 100 plus employees, that there's just going to be that group, and you can try and clamp down on that all you want. It's you're just going to create more. What you don't want to do is feed that interpretation, the negative interpretation of what your plans are and your competence in executing on those plans by not communicating. If you can, if these people seem irrational because you continue communicating in such a way that's super open, then the group's not gonna grow. It'll just stay kind of the unhappy group on the corner.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. Should like tell it. Well, let me kind of flip this. Let's flip away from business. What do you do that's for Drew? What are some things, some passions, hobbies, readings? What do you like to do?
I have not had it because I've been working on the startup, and because my kids are now each in two different sports. I haven't had a chance to do a lot of Drew things. When I did have Drew time, which I do now, I'm getting back into having Drew time again.
Oh, I love
I
that.
like yoga. I do like woodworking. This is a set.
Okay, I was gonna ask about all the tools in the back.
Yeah, so I actually did get to do some woodworking over the weekend, which was fun. I've got scrap lumber down here on the ground, so
Nice.
that stuff's really fun to me when I have the chance. And then, I'm sitting in my garage. I'm surrounded actually on this side over here is workout equipment. Over here is actually camping gear and a kayak. So those are the things. I
love
sit
it.
in my entertainment zone.
Yeah. Your man cave has become your work slash. You look at this. You have integrated your work and life together. Bravo.
I do like the fact at any given moment I could throw on like a backpack and walk out the door with a kayak. Like I could just do that right now.
I love it. That's great. Oh my gosh. Are there any other wisdoms that you would like to impart on our audience today?
I think the most common sorts of failure mode are getting under fire and thinking that you don't have time to sit down and think about the long term. And I think it's very, very easy for you as an individual and for you as a team to just that kind of like task execution mode. We're just getting information and executing on it immediately without thinking of taking a step back. And that step back is where you get all of the value. It's like, okay, where is this going? How do I see these things progressing? And yeah, it's true of, your individual work, your team's work, and in your personal life. Like, based on where I want to go, what does this relate to?
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. I remember at one time just always being go, 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 go. And I was busy, and in my mind that equated to success. But I didn't know, and I say this because it's like one of my favorite lines to say. But I'm like, I ask people now, I'm like, do you know what your silence sounds like? Because I didn't know. Somebody asked me that. And for a minute, I pondered a lot because I'm like, what's this cuckoo silence? What? Silence? That is when I became a big yogi and started meditating. And, even if it's like 10 minutes a day, that 5 to 10 minutes that you step back and you have some sort of, silence where you can think through sort of all the pieces and how you move forward and just have some reflection time, changes your life so much. And I think the net message here and so many things you've said and I've sort of shared in is that micro habits and changes make bigger impacts. And these are like small things, very small impacts and changes individuals can make. And knowing your silence is very important. And when I say that, I don't mean just be quiet. No, I mean like being reflective in your silence and understanding where you want to go. And are you on the path that you want to go at? You can be busy, but is it going to get you to like you said, the ultimate state of where you think your life should be,
Yeah, the internet teaches us basically that if you don't say anything, that you don't exist. And it's a extremely negative kind of feedback loop. And I think that folds into, your email, your company Slack, having an opinion in a meeting. there's huge power in not having an opinion, just like realizing when you don't need to use your voice. This thing will get resolved without me. And there's also huge empowerment in it. Like, there's nothing I like better than when I was a manager and I would go off on vacation, come back, see like 300 messages waiting for me, but like they'd all been resolved without me. Like, okay, good, but I did a good job. I set my team up in a way where they could execute based on the way I would want them to while I wasn't even around. Being able to fire yourself is the ultimate form of leadership, I think.
Yes, no, that's wonderful. That's great. So Drew, if somebody today listening to this is like, man, I could use a Drew in my life. How would one go about looking for you, and what kind of client is ideal for your business?
Yeah. So I finally did check out of the Twitter as it's dying with a whimper instead of a bang. So you find me on LinkedIn. It'll be under Andrew Dillon, or ProductBridge. So ProductBridge, all one word, .co. And I'm just Drew at. My ideal clients are, I do end up working with, although I do mostly focus on early stage startups, I do work with a lot of late stage private companies are looking for, specific research, or folks who never had product before, because I describe my service as scaling product strategy. And scaling product strategy is true. You need that whether you're building a brand new thing at a large organization or you've just achieved product market fit as an early stage startup. I really help you think through kind of where you're going, what you need to do, who are the people and processes you need to get there. And then I help you hire and bring in the team to run it long term.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Drew. I feel like today so much has been shared, from business to evolution of mind, to change management, to family and life. Thank you for your insight. It's been great. And I know that I'll be reaching out on some personal things because, this is a world that, everything's at our fingertips. Like, we can create and do, and having, somebody by your side that has done it many times and can provide that strategy is a great way to sort of eliminate some, I would say, risk in product development and go-to-market strategies.
Yeah, thanks so much, Manal.
Thank you for tuning in. On each episode, we will continue to bring on successful, dynamic individuals to dig deep and share stories that will inspire you to power up your life. This show is packed with unrivaled storytelling and no reservation advice. Tune in now by searching Power Up with Manal wherever podcasts are found. Please show us just a little bit of love by leaving a review and hitting that subscribe button. This helps our small production get reach and voices heard globally. Let's power up together, baby.